Hello and welcome to my YouTube video. This is John Amabile with my video for Chapter 3 of my book Changing the Worlds, the For-Profit Plan to Mine Asteroids and Terraform 2 Planets in One Human Lifetime. Chapter 3 of my book specifically focuses on our mining survey of the solar system, and I get into kind of the nuts and bolts of how we will do that. So specifically what we'll do is over a 2-year period, we will create 16 what I call katas, which is basically a nuclear thermal rocket, and some other components that I touched on in Chapter 2. The katas themselves will all be identical, but they'll have different attached equipment based on specifically where they're going. These will be launched over a 2-year period. So obviously the geometry of the solar system and the geography of the solar system both it's kind of very different than Earth. So this plan has taken that into account. So as you see, I have the orbital rings of Mars, Earth, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, etc. So over a 2-year period, we'll have 2 complete orbits around the Sun and all of those potential telemetries of different orbits lining up. So within those, we'll pick 16 of the best alignments to launch the katas from the Earth. Of these, 8 of them will carry a Mars surface probe. So 8 of them at some point will intersect Mars. They'll release a communication satellite into Mars orbit, and they'll release a balloon probe that'll go down to the Martian, into the Martian atmosphere. Most of the probe will break away, and then it will just float around Mars using its gravimeter to scan the Martian surface. Meanwhile, the katas will be scanning asteroids, first near Earth, also Earth-Venus crossers, the Autumn group of asteroids, then near Mars, and then so on all the way out to the Kuiper Belt. We'll also have 4 gas giant pods, so each of the katas that go through a gas giant or go near a gas giant will release this pod, which will not have a nuclear thermal rocket, but it will basically be stuck in the orbit of the gas giants, one each, where it'll have a gravimeter, it'll have a small maneuvering thruster, so it can move around between asteroids and moons, recording all that data and then beaming it back to Earth for analysis. Also, most important of all, as these katas are beaming through the solar system, each one will have 16 different items to scan. I have the entire list within Chapter 3 of my book. Almost think of it like the layer of a cake, like each one has something to scan on the first layer, second, third, fourth, etc., all the way to the end, which is the Kuiper Belt. Now at that point, we have very hazy data about the solar system, so then it's more like a zone, like these katas will go to this zone, these katas will go to this zone. As you can see from this diagram, the katas are clustered in groups of 4, and these line up with the gas giant. So 4 katas will go in the general vicinity of Neptune, 4 to Uranus, 4 Jupiter, 4 to Saturn. And these alignments are set up so each one will drop off a gas giant pod. The first kata will start scanning the Kuiper Belt. Based on that kata's data, we'll vector more katas in after the first one arrives. The end goal being that we'll find Kuiper Belt objects that contain either methane or nitrogen, whatever it is that we need by then, or quite possibly both. Eventually, the katas will all attach to the same asteroid and then start slowly pushing that asteroid back. And then over the course of 40 years, we can actually recover asteroids from the Kuiper Belt using this method. I quote an article by Robert Zubrin where he talks about this very similar idea. Now, as these katas are going, it'll take them about 2 years from the launch to when they're complete. So the launches will begin in year 4, the launches will end in year 6. So the kata number 1 launches in year 4, kata 16 launches in year 6, kata 16 will arrive in the Kuiper Belt by year 8. That's when we'll start pushing all of these objects back to pretty much Mars is where all these objects will go. The short term will push them into Uranus or Neptune's orbit. Then we'll perform a gravity assist around Uranus and Neptune and then send the objects back to Mars. I'll touch on that in a later chapter, but we use the same technology all throughout. Also, briefly, the targets that I have assigned for the katas to scan, those are based on mineralogy, so they're suspected to have very valuable metal, or they're just very large, something that has enormous, series is 1,000 kilometers across. It's very likely it has something useful just because the mass is so enormous. Also, items that have terraforming material, like 596 Sheila is an asteroid thought to contain water. Several of the moons of Jupiter are thought to contain water. Also, each of these katas, 4 of them will be going near Jupiter, 4 near Uranus, etc. So we'll also get the opportunity for those katas to do a very close scan of the moons. Each of the gas giants have dozens of moons. Some of the smaller moons that are in outlying orbits are very convenient sources for terraforming or mining. So anyway, that's all for Chapter 3. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email is attached to this YouTube video. And of course, please look at my website, which has all of these slides on it. Thank you and have a good night.